Today, we are going to give you an updated car share rankings. I do this about every 3 or 4 months. A lot of interesting things have happened in the car share space in the last 3 or 4 months. I'm going to start this with the different 5 options of how to rent your cars. We will start with number 5 and I will move back to number 1. So today, I want to start this off and give you number 5. Number 5 is Uber Car Share because, well, they went out of business. So they are obviously in last place right now. Uber Car Share is pretty much dead. What really surprised me about Uber Car Share, full disclosure, I knew their team. I spoke with their team many times. I thought their team was very good and I expected big things out of them about a year ago. Aside from that, they also had an excellent beta program in Australia where they had a pretty robust system for Uber Car Share over in Australia. So I expected them to roll this out pretty effectively in Boston as well as Toronto. However, they just couldn't get the cars. And as it turns out, it's very difficult to start a car sharing program. And I think after they dumped about a year of money into it, they said, forget this. We're going to move on to something else. And that's very indicative of Uber, by the way. Uber is a company that will kind of try anything once and they throw things at the wall to see if it sticks. And if it doesn't, after a year, they move on to some new project. So that's a very common thing for Uber to do. I don't really expect them to come back into the Uber car share space, but we'll see what they come up with. They do have some new tools and tricks that I think are interesting for our industry that's working pretty well. A tool that I really like that they have put together is Uber Fleet, which is a new way to source private rental agreements through drivers. So they do have a system now where you can find drivers online and put them into cars that you have, basically bypassing any kind of car share platform. Obviously, then you have to deal with private rental system and how all that works and all the nuances of that. If you do not know how to do that, I would recommend talking to me before you create lots of headaches for yourself. Trust me when I say I learned this the hard way by myself about 10 years ago. And there are a lot of different things that can go wrong if you are going to do private rental agreements to rideshare drivers. Before I move on, click below, grab the 5 things you must do before starting a car rental business. That also comes with the car share growth guide, which gives you a city-by-city breakdown of which car share platforms are strongest in your area. There's a lot of good information in there. Moving on, let's get to number 4. Number 4 is obviously HireCar. What's interesting about HireCar is that people still use HireCar. HireCar is very popular amongst rideshare drivers. Even still, they see it as kind of the go-to spot to find cars for long-term rentals on for Uber. Now, that said, from a host standpoint, I still think this is a very last case scenario option. You really don't want to use HireCar unless you're trying to get rid of a car. In this industry, HireCar is on its way out. Obviously, they were acquired by Getaround about a year and a half ago. I think we are getting probably about 2 to 3 months away from seeing that platform and website be just completely dissolved and absorbed into the Getaround system. So I don't think that's too far away. I think that is coming relatively soon in early 2025. So HireCar is likely just going to disappear probably by summer of 2025. Worst case scenario, I would say. I think it'll happen much more before then. So if you are someone who likes to use HireCar for car sharing, I would start making plans to not use HireCar. Number 3, I would say private rental agreements. Private rental agreements always have a soft spot in my heart. That is how I came up in this industry. But private rental agreements, while they are the most lucrative form of car sharing, it is the devil that you don't know. It is very difficult to master it well. It is very lucrative. If you can get this under control, the system under control, it is an excellent form of rentals. I still am a big proponent of private rentals because I know how to do private rentals very well. So it is very much a system that is very lucrative. If you have a new car these days, brand new sedan or a brand new Tesla or something like that, you can charge $500 a week for that rental. That is not out of the question. However, you do have a lot of issues with collection, repossessions, all that stuff. I would say that when you have private rental agreements going, probably about 10 to 20% of your renters are going to be behind on payments at any given time. That's very common with this industry, and you must learn how to create leverage over the renters if you're going to run this type of agreement. There's a variety of techniques of how to do that. If you want to learn more about that, talk to me privately and I can help you with that. I definitely have a whole system on this. I would say that private rental agreements, still very lucrative, still a great way to make cash on the side. If you find a good renter and someone who is solid on payment, you're gonna make a lot of money with that car. The record I have ever set for most revenue in 1 year was my Nissan Maxima. When I first bought it back in 2018, that car made $21,000 in 1 year through a private rental agreement, which is excellent, by the way. That is almost double what you would make on a car share platform for the most part. That $21,000 was gross revenue. It had a relatively minimum payment. I mean, the payment on it was around $500 or $600 a month, but there's definitely very good money to be made in a private rental agreement. If you plan to expand your business into 10, 20, 30, 40 cars, you definitely need to incorporate this system into your system somehow. I have worked with a lot of different companies in the past year to help them build out and perfect this system because it's definitely lucrative. Number 2. Now, we're down to our final 2. It's either gotta be Turo or Getaround. I'm going to go with Getaround right now, but I'm going to caveat it saying this. A lot of interesting things are happening between Getaround and Turo right now. There are a lot of changes happening. This is a very dynamic space and competition between these two companies right now, especially from the host standpoint. Things are rapidly getting better for the host on Getaround. And so we're starting to see some changes. Obviously, I've talked about the new profit splits that are coming down the pipe. That's going to be a big game changer in terms of how much money you're pulling each month for Getaround. Getaround is making all the right changes that need to happen to make themselves very competitive in this industry. They've gone through a lot of different changes from an executive level in the last year. I think that they're in a situation now where they're getting ready to really grow, given that they are well funded. They've got their leadership nicely in place and new ideas and listening to hosts and really implementing them. So I'm very curious to see what happens with Getaround in 2025. I think that they're definitely on the upswing, and I think they're in a place where it's going to start making a lot of sense to work with them. A couple things about that. They are also about to launch a long-term renter program on their platform. So if you are accustomed to hire car system, they're basically transitioning that over to Getaround, where you can deal with long-term renters on Getaround. But the system is going to be way smoother, way cleaner. The software is going to be way better, and all the drivers are going to be properly vetted. If they can make that work and work effectively, it is going to get really interesting, because if you can get a long-term driver who is paying on time, can't turn on that car unless he's paid because of the Connect system, and you're pulling $1,600, $1,700 a month through that system, then you're going to have something really interesting starting to happen, because even though it's going to be a little high mileage on the cars, the revenue is going to be very good. And I'm very interested to see how that works out. My fleet is about to start testing cars in that system, and so I will definitely report on how that goes. And lastly, number 1, coming in with Turo. Obviously, Turo has been the big fish in this pond for a long time. They are still number 1 in this industry, in my opinion. However, things are changing rapidly, and they are becoming really not easy to work with. What I would tell you is this. I've been dealing with Turo lately. What I cannot stand about their current system and their current platform is the required discounts for 1 month, 2 month, and 3 month rentals. I know they're doing that because they have a deal with Uber Rent. They're appealing to rideshare drivers or food delivery drivers. I cannot stand the fact that they are requiring a minimum 50% discount on a month-long rental, or a 55% discount on a 2-month-long rental, or a 60% discount on a 3-month-long rental. That is completely insane. They're going to keep this up. I'm going to tell you right now, this is becoming a non-viable platform, because they are just going to start raping and pillaging hosts for their cars. This is a big reason why I think Getaround needs to come on strong in this industry right now, because Turo really sees themselves as not having a lot of competition in this space. So they're basically doing whatever they want. They're basically just telling the hosts, go screw yourself. We're going to take your car and do whatever we want with it. We're going to give it away for super cheap, and we'll give you pennies on the dollar based on whatever we want to give you. If you are a Turo only business, I'm telling you right now, I implore you, you have to learn the other platforms. You have to learn Getaround. You have to learn private rentals. Obviously, you're not going to learn Uber car share. But what I would tell you is that you've got to start learning to diversify right now, because it could get ugly on Turo in the next year. I don't love what they're doing. I'm using Turo currently for a handful of Teslas. It is just very frustrating what they are forcing you to implement in terms of discounts. I hate it. I really hate it. For my own sake, I don't see Turo as a long-term solution, frankly, just because of the crazy discounts they're forcing everyone to implement. Obviously, on the shorter stuff, shorter rides under a month, you don't have to do any discounts. That's great, fine. These long-term discounts are nuts. It's crazy, because when the money shakes out, you're going to be losing a lot of money on these long-term rentals. So I don't love that at all. However, you can't argue with the amount of volume they have on their website, the amount of renters they have. They have excellent marketing. They have excellent amount of demand on their website. So if you put a car on there, you will likely get it rented. But their agreement with Uber Rent, I know, is really upsetting a lot of hosts in this space. I hope they make some change, because this is becoming almost untenable for most hosts. It's a really bad change that they have made. So that is my general overview of the entire industry right now. What I would tell you is that in 2025, I think we're going to see some really interesting changes. Like I said, obviously Uber's kind of out of the picture, but Uber Fleet is an option now for sourcing long-term renters. Hire Car, I think, is on its way out. Thank God. We are really kind of starting to come into a two-horse race between Getaround and Turo. I know Getaround has kind of been an afterthought in the industry unless you live in one of their major markets, and that would be like Boston, DC, North Jersey, Philadelphia, Atlanta, Chicago, San Francisco, LA, Denver, and maybe Seattle. But what I would tell you is that I do think we're going to see a big push from them next year. I think there's a lot of initiatives coming down the pipe that are going to really incentivize people to put cars on Getaround. So I do think a lot of interesting stuff's happening. We will see what happens. All that to say, before I go, click below, grab the 5 things you must do before starting a car business. I will catch you in the next episode. Thank you.